Welcome to the RealTime Fantasy Sports Show. I'm Jeff Paur, senior writer with RealTime Fantasy Sports. I'm joined once again by Logan Glaser. Logan, thanks so much for joining me on the show once again. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on again, Jeff.
We're really excited about this show today, Logan and I. We are going to do kind of a fantasy championship preview show. So that's our big contest, the fantasy championship here at RealTime Fantasy Sports. We give away a $500,000 grand prize for the winner. And we are having on a past champion, Stephen Hawley. He won the championship in 2017. He's one of the top-ranked players on our site as well. He's a tremendous player. He knows a ton about this contest. He's a past winner as well. So we're going to talk to him about strategy. Should be a lot of fun, Logan. I'm really eager to pick his brain today.
Absolutely. And there's obviously a different strategy with a TFC championship with an overall tournament than what you might do in a regular normal league against just 11 other players. You're going up against 6,600 other teams. So we're definitely excited to learn about his strategy and how he used that to win in 2017.
Let's talk about the contest a little bit, explain to our users how it works. So there's you play in your league and you can win that, and you win prizes with that as well. And then you move on to the overall championship if you qualify for that, for a chance to win additional prizes as well.
Yeah, so you're going to be in a 12-man league. Top 3 teams earn cash prizes with that, and then there's an overall championship. So there's 3 different ways you can qualify for that overall championship. You can have the top record in your league, most points scored during the regular season, or if you make it to your championship game in that league, then you'll be entered into that overall championship, which takes place between weeks 15 through 17 for the NFL. And then the top 100 teams in that overall championship win at least $500 extra on top of their league prizes. So lots of money to be won there.
Yeah, definitely. And how can people get into this contest again, Logan?
Yeah, if you go to rtsports.com under Fantasy Championship, you can enter that. We also have 3-pack discounts. So if you buy 3 teams, you can save $50 on that 3rd team. So definitely take advantage of that. And we got drafts going around the clock. We also got slow drafts, live drafts, and also a little promotion. If you enter a TFC today, you'll win, or you'll get a free $20 best ball superflex entry. So take advantage of that. We've already had 1 fill up for this evening. We also have 5 other live drafts on the slate for tonight. So get a free $20 best ball superflex entry if you enter a TFC tonight.
That's awesome. That's a great deal. And those superflex best ball leagues are super popular too. And we're doing this because football's kicking off tonight. If you can believe that, there's a game tonight. Are you excited about that? I know I am.
Absolutely. We're going to see Zach Wilson back in there for them. So yeah, it should be. Football's back. It's, even though we're not going to see the starters play much, or if at all, it's good to have something on with football.
Yeah, it'd be fun to see Aaron Rodgers, but I don't think that's happening. Let's talk about the contest quickly, our strategies before we bring Stephen on, because I really want to pick his brain. But when it comes to you, we can't play in these games, obviously, because we're employees at the site, but also state rules in Missouri do not allow us to play other contests as well. So we cannot even get in these big game contests. But still, I've done it in the past. I know you have as well. But what specific strategies do you have that you like to employ for these big game contests like the fantasy championship?
Yeah, personally, I think you have to kind of stack your team a little bit to win that overall top prize. If you're just wanting to win a league prize, just within your league, I don't think you need a stack. But if you want to get that overall prize, I think you do need a QB wide receiver stack. And if that team goes off and scores 40 plus points, then you're looking really good. Something like a Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, some type of stack like that. So I think that's really important. I think you also need to take into consideration matchups for weeks 15, 16, and 17. So that's where it's won. You also take in your average points going into that week from the regular season. So that's definitely something to keep in mind with. So if you have the most points scored during that regular season, you can take a 10 to 15 point advantage heading into that overall championship. So that's a big factor as well.
It's funny you mentioned strength of schedule, because I don't look at that a ton for my standard leagues, but for this, we have it in our free draft guide. I have the strength of schedule for every team, every position, I should say, and the quarterback and wide receiver, 2 of them that stood out to me for the playoffs. Bears and Bengals both have really good strength of schedules for the playoffs, fantasy strength of schedule. So you stack Burrow and Jamar Chase or Fields and DJ Moore, and I think it can end up paying off. But it's something I do more so in a contest like this. So I was really glad you brought that up. And also, I think playing it super safe is not a recipe for victory. So I think taking more chances is the way to go as well. So if you want to maybe take a chance on a couple more rookies than normal, or players that are have some injury concerns that could end up dropping in drafts for whatever reason, but end up being really good. I think you got to take some risks if you want to win it all. You got to try to differentiate yourself from the rest of the field.
Yeah, absolutely. You need those players with high sides like you were talking about with Justin Fields. Last year, he had back-to-back games with 40-plus points. If you get that in an overall championship in those playoff weeks, you're looking really good.
All right, let's bring on Stephen now and get his thoughts on this. So, Stephen, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. It's good to see you once again.
I appreciate you guys having me today. Bit of a nice present. Today is actually my birthday.
Oh, wow.
August 3rd. 35 years young, as I like to say. So, yeah, quite a great gift to have to be on with you guys today. I appreciate it.
So Stephen won the championship in 2017. He's been one of the best players on our sites for years. He's ranked, I think, 11th, 10th, or 11th overall on our site as well. And like I said, he's won it before in the past. So we wanted to talk to him about his strategy for this contest. And also, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat, and we will definitely get to those as well. So feel free to hit us up. And I'll start first, though, Stephen. So basic question: when does your preparation start for the coming season?
Really, the preparation for me starts really around the Senior Bowl for college football. Reading Senior Bowl reports, using tons of social media interfaces to read and to really get a good feel for the upcoming rookie class. And then once the combine hits, I'll watch a lot of combine coverage. And then obviously, it just kind of correlates with the NFL draft and so forth and mini camps and whatnot.
I like that. And then can you give us your thoughts on ADP, and do you use it? It's a feature that a lot of people use. So definitely want to know more about that.
Yeah, ADP, I mean, it's just a good guideline, especially if you're just now getting to the point of getting in drafts and not quite familiar with where people are going. It's a good just bar to set for yourself on where guys are going. I use it more for tier drop off. It kind of correlates with one another. Really go towards more like tier draft basis, and knowing where my tier of drop off is, like, well, I could probably have a better chance of getting X amount of players at wide receiver because I have more in that tier than I do running back. So it might switch to having to take the running back as opposed to like a wide receiver and stuff like that. So yeah, they kind of go hand in hand with each other.
Yeah, and that's constantly always changing, especially from when you start early drafting in March or whenever you get in your first draft. Absolutely, ADP is always changing.
We're talking with Stephen Hawley here, past champion of the Fantasy Championship, our big contest here at RealTime Fantasy Sports, and he's won it before. And I'd like to get his thoughts on where do you think drafts are won in these big contests? Early, middle, late rounds. When you won, where do you think your biggest positives were that made you, get over the top?
For me, I mean, the year that I won distinctly, and I still think it's even today, 6 years later, I think it's those middle rounds. You're looking at rounds 6 through 11. And for me, where I do draft early, I was very fortunate in Kareem Hunt and Alvin Kamara that year. Kareem Hunt, before Spencer Ware went down for the Kansas City Chiefs, I was getting him in about the 8th, 9th round, and, had an unfortunate incident with Spencer Ware to where it just kind of catapulted Kareem Hunt to the top of the depth chart, and he started going way late, way earlier in August and late August drafts. So, and I still even think today that your middle round guys are the ones that are going to catapult some teams to the top and get you to that 3-week point race to potentially win it.
So to piggyback on that a little bit, Stephen, do you have specific targets that you make a list for in the middle rounds when you're coming into a draft? Anything like that?
Probably not initially, because initially it's, you're just kind of getting a feel of where guys are going. And then, at this point of the season being early August, there's definitely guys that I will target. There's definitely guys that I'll stay away. They go hand in hand as well. Definitely. There's definitely guys in those middle rounds that I think could, exceed their ADP and exceed their rank and projections. And absolutely.
Yeah, and Stephen, how do you approach the TFC contest differently than other contests on RT Sports, such as best ball contest? We've got standalone leagues. What makes that TFC different from approach with that overall championship?
Well, you touched on it, Logan, and it's really become a popular thing probably in the last couple of years as far as redraft goes in big tournaments. But in best ball, stacking was very popular thing even 4, 5, 6 years ago. It's kind of transitioned over to the big tournament leagues, and I agree with you. I think it's almost become somewhat a necessity by default because where you may have one of you touched on Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, where you may have one, a lot of people are going to have the other. So if you have that blow up game during the 3-week playoff race, well, it'll be good to have one, but a lot of people are going to have both. So not really unfortunate, but it's almost a play style that you have to adapt to and have to really grasp on and do the stacking in the big tournament leagues, as opposed to like a standalone league where you're going to be the only person to have that player. It's not so much as an important factor of success as it is in a big tournament with thousands of other teams and roster makeups.
So you talk about stacking, but anything else you like to do specifically for the fantasy championship when it comes to drafting? Any specific ways you like to build your roster? I know it kind of depends on where you're picking, but is there any things you like to do specifically with roster build?
Well, to be honest, as opposed to years past, I've been a very drafting for depth type of roster construction. But now with kind of the separation that quarterback has had, unlike any other years before, I really am trying to target one of those early first 5 or 6 quarterbacks in the first 5 or 6 rounds. Normally in the years past wouldn't have done that, but I think they just really have separated themselves. And also you kind of limit the buzz factor of guys that were going in that range last year. Guys like Darnell Mooney, Elijah Moore, Rashad Bateman, they really bit me hard last year. I was big on those guys and they didn't really pan out. So really getting that anchor at quarterback that can get you the consistent point production as opposed to waiting till later. That's definitely something I've switched to with the TFC this year, and going pretty wide receiver heavy as compared to years past, not having as much of a balanced roster construction, simply because they just tend to stay healthier for a longer duration of the season. And guys like Jerick McKinnon, Jerick McKinnon was on the TFC winning roster last year, as a waiver guy. He had a 3-week stretch where he was hot, and those are the type of guys you just got to look for through the season to balance out your roster later on as it gets closer to the end game.
Yeah, and then speaking about wide receivers going early, there's so much uncertainty with running backs this offseason, probably more than we've ever had, especially we got the Jonathan Taylor situation. We got Josh Jacobs potentially holding out, Breece Hall, Dalvin Cook. How are you approaching that position?
Yeah.
Are you waiting for them on the draft, or are you taking a risk with it? You also got Alvin Kamara with a possible suspension.
I think of the guys that you've mentioned, Jonathan Taylor and Josh Jacobs, obviously their contract negotiations are a bit of a different dilemma rather than like Breece Hall. Of those 4 guys you mentioned, Breece Hall, if he can make it to about the mid-third, late third, I'm willing to kind of take that risk. I know he's currently on the pup, not really practicing much. And Dalvin Cook, it could influence a little bit if he ends up with the Jets, if he ends up signing. But as far as drafting those guys, like just where Jonathan Taylor and Jacobs normally go in TFCs, I just prefer the wide receiver route, and I'm waiting later on running backs. Aaron Jones in the 4th, Cam Akers in the 6th. It's really tough to spend early capital on something like on guys like that when there's just so much uncertainty that I like the wide receivers, give quarterback potential, tight end, and just waiting on running back this year.
I wanted to get both your guys' thoughts on Dalvin Cook. I'm just kind of confused why his draft capital is so high, because I don't see a situation where he's going to go in and start right away. Maybe Miami, I guess, would be one spot, but overall, he's going ahead of a lot of backs that look like 3-down backs, and I'm just confused by it. Am I missing something?
I don't believe you are. I mean, he had somewhat of an efficient season with Minnesota last year, but I just think at this juncture of his career that he's going to be more of a complimentary guy. Unless, like you said, like I could see a route where if you were to go to Miami And I ultimately believe that is where he will end up. I just don't think the Jets are going to budge much on his contract situation. The only way that I could see him landing with the Jets is if Breece Hall really isn't ready to go. But I just don't think that will be the case. I think he will be ready at some point in the next couple of weeks, getting to practice and being available week one. But yeah, even in Miami, like if he were to go to Miami, I could see because you're not having to beat out much competition. But yeah, if he lands with the Jets, I just around 5th, 6th round is where he's going currently. I can't buy into that. I just don't see it.
So kind of along the same lines, you might make a mistake if you take Cook that early. So overall, when you're watching, you're in a lot of drafts. Do you see drafters make some mistakes that you kind of think could be preventable? What is something that comes to mind at all that you see drafters make mistakes with when it comes to the fantasy championship?
I don't see it as much this year, and maybe people are kind of understanding, but I mean it still happens from time to time. But for example, you've seen in drafts with the big 3 quarterbacks, Mahomes, Hurts, and Josh Allen. Seeing somebody take one of those quarterbacks, and then it gets to about that 5th round, and then they're doubling up with Lamar Jackson. It's like, are they really trying to play some sort of fantasy defense to prevent somebody else from having an elite quarterback option? No, I really don't understand what sort of strategy that is, because you're just you're crippling yourself more so than the other potential owners of getting an elite quarterback. So that's one thing. Like it's not as often, but I still see it and just shake my head every time.
So it's funny you say that. I'm in a Raz Bowl draft right now. The Raz Bowl is kind of they do a big draft with experts and whatever. But someone took Jalen Hurts with their 2nd pick, and then they took Joe Burrow in the 5th round. Like you said, I don't understand what's happening. I was hoping I would get him on the way back, so I was kind of upset that happened. But still, it didn't make any sense to me at all.
Hey, he's playing fantasy defense. He's playing fantasy defense. That's what he's doing.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a bit early to play defense in the 2nd overall pick in 5th round.
Yeah.
But and another very important topic with the fantasy championship is waivers. Unlike best ball leagues where it's just draft and forget, you have to manage waivers throughout the season, and that's a huge factor in that fantasy championship. How do you go about the importance and the strategy involved with waivers?
I've done a lot of different things as far as waivers goes through the years, especially with like preseason waivers, going all in on guys, being a little bit more conservative. I've definitely learned that being a little bit more conservative with the preseason waivers, but really that week one waiver, if you're reading snap count reports and seeing guys are on the field more than what you expected, a lot of times it's probably going to stick, and we'll probably tier more to those guys in week one. Really paid off for me a couple years ago with like Cordero Patterson and Hunter Renfrow. They had great week ones, and luckily I hit on those guys. And I mean, there's always a flip side. Last year, Kyle Phillips of the Tennessee Titans, he had a nice week one, had good target share, and I was like, okay, maybe he could be the nice slot secondary option for Tennessee. And it didn't pan out like Kyle Phillips out of UCLA, but just, he was a one-hit wonder. So, I mean, it goes both ways, but I really read into a lot of what kind of usage guys get week one. And then through the season, you're kind of having to like just fill your roster out as injuries start to happen, guys underperforming. If you really have to have if a starting running back goes down and you really have to have them to maintain your team to get to at least the divisional playoffs and then even potentially onward, I'll really hammer out those guys and spend a little extra than maybe was what necessary.
Yeah, and kickers and defenses are involved with the fantasy championship. Do you stream those throughout the waivers based on matchups, or do you have a game plan going in with that?
I do. I do stream them. Unless I'll stream them unless I look ahead of the schedule, and if defenses, I mean, they change every year. One of the most volatile ad drops throughout the season. But if I like last year, the New England Patriots, I saw they just had a string of 5 or 6 games, and I was like, well, I could add them, and I'll spend a little bit more than what's probably necessary. We talked about people making mistakes in TFCs. That's another one that I'll see every year, looking at the report of the preseason waiver, and guys spending $100 and $200 on kickers and defenses, and I'm just like, it's not necessary, guys. You don't have to do that. $3 to $5 max is all you need. But yeah, streaming defenses and kickers, and then once it gets to that point of being to the overall dance, we'll double up on kickers and defenses just to have that matchup. Look at the 3-week matchup. Try to really get those defenses a couple weeks prior to that for the end of the contest that year.
Again, we're talking with Stephen Hawley. He won the TFC Fantasy Championship 2017. Great owner here at RealTime Fantasy Sports. I wanted to ask you too about drafts this year that are going off. Anything standing out to you in specific things that are happening in drafts this year? Anything at all standing out to you so far?
Just the rise of the early quarterbacks. Really, that's probably something that's different than what we didn't see last year. Last year, Josh Allen was going about the 4th round, followed by Herbert and even Mahomes later than that. Those guys are locked in at 3rd round, sometimes 2nd round picks. And then even the next tier of guys behind them, we're looking at up to 6 or 7 quarterbacks gone before the end of the 6th round. So that's definitely something that's different than what I'm accustomed to. I've always been a proponent of waiting on that quarterback. And this year I'm just kind of taking a different approach and really trying to get one of those first, Trevor Lawrence at worst as my starting quarterback, and then building out my roster from there.
Yeah, that's interesting you say that. I'm kind of feeling the same way this year with drafts too. But as we get ready to start these games getting underway, so how about preseason hype? Like you see, I think it's worse than ever because of Twitter. You see all these highlights, certain people. I mean, how much stock do you take into that, if any? I mean, I think you have to pay attention to it, but I mean, what's your thoughts on a lot of the preseason hype surrounding players going into the season?
You absolutely nailed it. I mean, you have Twitter and TikTok and all these different social media platforms that can get guys exposure. And last year was a prime example that I wish I had just kind of stuck to my gut feeling about, and it was Elijah Moore. Elijah Moore was making play after play after play in preseason last season. And I was like, at the end of the day, how good is the quarterback play going to be? I think it's funny how I didn't shy away from Elijah Moore, but I had the same feeling about Kyle Pitts that a lot of people were high on last year. I was like, well, how great can he really be with Marcus Mariota throwing the football to him? And whether it was more Marcus Mariota or it's just they want to run the ball 47 times, being down 2 touchdowns, that's what the Falcons want to do. So really, I'm focusing more on the quarterback play that these guys have more so than the preseason hype. The coordinators, the type of coordinators and their schemes that they want to that they fit and what they want to do, and offensive lines. How healthy is the offensive line? We saw how great the Eagles were last year, and they had one of the best statistically offensive lines in the last decade. Jared Goff had an amazing year, and he had a top 3 unit that was healthy all through the season. So I'm really looking at the improvements on the O-line, coordinators, not so much reading into the big plays in training camp. I'm just trying to steer away from that as much as possible.
Yeah, and if you look at that, almost every single day, it's a new player that's getting so much hype. I mean, I go on Twitter right now, I'll see 5 different players that have scored a touchdown in practice and hyping them up to be the best player ever this year.
Yep, and it'll show in your next TFC. It'll be there.
Definitely. Stephen, thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. It's great talking with you, getting insight from you. Again, you won the championship 2017, so you've been there, done that, and I appreciate you coming on and talking with us today.
I much appreciate you getting in contact with me. I know it's been a while, and this is the first time doing the video cast. Now we've done our plenty fair share of podcasts in years past, so good to put face to face. And nice to meet you, Logan. And
yeah, nice to meet you too.
I really appreciate this. I enjoy doing these type of things. So anytime, give me a call. I'll be there.
Sounds great. And happy birthday, Stephen.
Hey, I appreciate it. Yeah. Going to celebrate. Thank you.
All right. That was Stephen Hawley, past winner of the Fantasy Championship. Thanks so much for him for joining us. Logan, I learned a lot from him today. It's good to hear from someone who's, accomplished it, because it's talking heads like us. No, I mean, I want people to listen to us, obviously, but these guys put their money where their mouth is. They've won it before. They know what it takes. And I think it's important to get their voices on more, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And these are veteran players that are doing 50+ drafts a year in these huge tournament contests. So it's absolutely valuable than us just talking about these contests and looking over the draft board to get that insight. And we learned a lot about the insight, I feel like, with regards of stacking, waiver wire, scheduling, streaming defenses, and such. So there's a lot to take away from what he said.
Yeah, the waiver wire is the big one. That's always a tough one to navigate, in my opinion. It's so hard to, like you said, like he said, I should say, some of these guys in week one, they sustain it for the rest of the season. Some of them don't. So it's really a game of cat and mouse a little bit, trying to figure out how much to spend and budget.
Yeah, it's a completely different best ball championship. Also,
Yep.
if you're new to real-time fantasy sports, we do have a power player waiver option where you can just manage all of your leagues on one page for waiver wire. It's a great tool. Easily can go through and select players. So you don't have, if you're in 100 leagues, you don't have to go one by one in each league. So definitely
Yeah.
something to look into.
And let's tell everybody about our promotion again that we're running today here at Real Time Fantasy Sports. Logan, you can go into that for us.
Yeah, so if you join a live TFC draft tonight, you will get a free $20 Best Ball Championship Superflex entry. Superflex Best Ball Championship just opened up. It's about 10% full. We just opened it a couple days ago, already 10% full. So it's definitely going to sell out within the next couple of weeks. So take advantage of that. Third team for TFC is also $50 off. So you can get $50 off for that third TFC team. Also get that $20 Best Ball Superflex entry. You can enter as many contests as you want this evening. We already have one that's full with that TFC. We've got 5 other on the schedule tonight, so definitely look into that.
Yeah, that should be a lot of fun tonight. Draft while you're watching the first preseason game of the season tonight. Should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to seeing football and seeing what's going on with all these rookies and players moving teams and whatnot. Should be exciting to watch for sure.
Yeah, it's been so long since we've just had football in several months, so it's definitely good to have that back in action. And it's 2 good teams to kind of watch. So compared to some primetime games last year with Thursday nights where we saw some duds, which I mean the backups are going to be playing tonight, but still it's going to be the Jets, Browns, 2 teams that are looking to make the playoffs this year.
Yeah, definitely. And like we said, this fantasy championship, just a great contest, gives away $500,000 to the winner. Stephen won that in 2017. All sorts of different strategies you can use. And the leaderboard too at the end, we didn't even talk about that. That thing is awesome to follow. It gives you a readout. It moves in real time as well, up and down as stuff's happening. It's just a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Yeah. You're going to have a real-time leaderboard with that. And you can also search players. So example, if I wanted to search Joe Burrow, I could search Joe Burrow and it'll highlight all of the teams that have him. So if you're currently sitting in 10th place, you can kind of look up who differentiates between your roster and the opponent's rosters above you. So you know who can make that top, make those big plays and move you up even further across the leaderboard.
Yeah, it's always interesting to me. I like to do that, hover over the player and see who's on their roster and see what the common themes are with players being on these top teams. Like Steven said, Jerick McKinnon was one of them on a lot of teams last year. He had a huge finish to the season. Who would have thought that?
I know. You definitely did not see that coming, and that's where that waiver wire plays such a huge impact on leagues. Because, I mean, he was a waiver wire pickup in almost every single league. I don't think you're going to be drafting McKinnon and expecting that production for Kansas City. So definitely a huge waiver wire pickup that probably won people lots of money. So yeah, first place $500,000, second place $75,000, third place $25,000, and it's all the way to 100 places winning at least $500.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember a few years back, I won with Tyler Thigpen. I picked him up and started him at QB. Tyler Thigpen won my entire league. I'll never let my friend live that down, who I beat in the championship, but never know what's going to happen. Yep. So thanks again to Stephen Hawley, the past champion of the Fantasy Championship, won in 2017. Really appreciate him joining the show today. Thank you to Logan for joining as well. A lot of fun talking with you about this Fantasy Championship. Go to rtsports.com and you can check out everything we have to offer. And after our show today, Getting Buzzed with Howard Bender is coming up here at 1 o'clock. Howard's the best. Always enjoy talking with him as well. So Howard should have a great show today. And again, Logan, thanks so much for joining me. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Jeff.
Don't forget to tune in to Getting Buzzed with Howard Bender coming up right now. This has been Jeff Paur for Real Time Fantasy Sports.